Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. My name is Nick and today guys we're jumping down into the world of Bitcoin, taking a look at what's been going on most recently, what we expect to happen next and all that wonderful stuff. As I get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, hit the like button. I do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe and stay up to date with all the videos and live streams that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. Now in the description below you're going to find multiple different links for different things. There's a few different promos, everything from kind of buy bits and BitGet all the way through to 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘, Ledger and so forth. But you'll also find the Patreon services. You'll also find the most important link down there, which is to our Discord server. If you haven't yet joined us in Discord, go ahead and check it out. Link is in the description down below. Fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. Okay, let's make a start with this. We've got a lot to get through and hardly any time to get through it. So let's start off by taking a brief look at this chart here. This is Bitcoin paired up with USD. We're on the 1 month chart and Bitstamp is the data source. Now we look at this one because it's good to reflect on where we currently are at the point of the 21st of September. Okay, so the first thing we want to acknowledge is this closed candle, this one here, is going to be incredibly important. As you can see, this is the dashed line at 19,666. Closing below this level is a good indication that we're probably going to revisit this level down here at $13,880. Okay, so far for the last 3 months we've closed above this line and it's been pretty good. Okay, you can see that this has turned into support last month. We lost it and we're moving back down. Okay, now we haven't come down into a new lower low yet. Okay, at least not according to Bitstamp or to Binance. But if you go to CoinGecko, you'll actually see that a new lower low has been printed. But here it has not. Okay, so one of the things that we want to be really cautious on is that if we do close below this level, then our expectation is to move to 13,880, which would of course trigger an impulsive structure to take us down to this lower level at 9,586.50. Okay, and again, these are just key levels on the monthly chart. Okay, now as I come down into our weekly, we can obviously see that structure 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, wave 3 is triggered just down here on this 1.618 area at $14,670. Okay, so if we go down lower than 14,600, that is going to be that trigger point. Okay, but we're not there yet. There's a lot of things to think about, lots of things that kind of can be hopeful that prevent this. Okay, so this is the kind of level that we want to prevent because it does mean that we'll come down significantly lower. Alternatively, if we're super bearish on it, then we might want to hit this number because it means that we're going to come down here later. Okay, but that's kind of where it sits. Now, the biggest issue that we have is our stochastic RSI on our weekly time frame. Okay, this is the stochastic RSI, not the relative strength index, but the stochastic relative strength index. Slightly different. The RSI or the relative strength index is better in a trend, and your stochastic RSI is better when it's not in a trend. Okay, so here we have a super sensitive to price movement stochastic RSI, and here we can see that we're high. We're not overbought, but we're very high on the stochastic RSI. And this is going to give us an indication that we are going to have to come down to this oversold area before we want a decent run to the upside. Okay, let's reflect on where this was previously. Down here was when we were at the June low. Okay, we went from oversold in the June low to close to this overbought area on this recent 43% push upwards towards $25,000. Okay, the last time before that was down here at $32,000 up to $48,000. Okay, each of this was a 46% move. This was a 33% move. Okay, and the crash that was between these was actually quite reasonable. We go from 69,000 to 32,000. We go from 48,000 to 17,000. Okay, so what do we think is going to happen? Now, obviously the stochastic RSI doesn't directly represent price, but it is an important metric to understand that when we're up here, we're going to have a significant pull to the downside. And considering that we're trading at $18,000, we're probably going to be going down into new lower lows. Okay, so they won't get too carried away. I know a lot of people are super hyped that June's the bottom of a bear market. Yay, fantastic. And you know, FOMO flowing in and whatnot. Unfortunately, that just simply isn't the case as per this metric, this indicator. But this is not the only one that does this and shows us this, right? There's a whole dozen of bullish indicators. Sure, there are. And then there's also a load of background data that is actually, a little bit more concerning, okay? And we're actually going to get into some of that right now. So over here, we have all my on-chain metrics, okay? This is just a Power BI report that's using APIs to gather all this information. So what we've got is the inflows and the outflows. Now, this number here was much bigger gap. Okay, there was a much bigger gap between these two numbers. 9 million going on to exchanges since the 1st of January 2022, and 9.26 million coming off of exchanges since the 1st of January 2022. This basically has now come down. It was well over 300,000 difference in terms of BTC. Now is at 260,000. Okay, so that means that we've seen a significant amount of coming onto exchanges recently. That's depicted in this graph here. When this midline, okay, anything below this midline is basically BTC coming off of the exchanges, and anything above this midline is Bitcoin going onto the exchanges. Okay, so we saw during July a little bit kind of coming onto exchanges. Early August and towards the end of August, we saw it flatlining. And then we saw more coming off as we kind of ended August and started September, and now we are with more going on to exchanges. We can also see this on the balance of Bitcoin on exchanges coming down, strange kind of fluctuations from time to time. There's another one just here. So again, an indication that what we are seeing is basically a lot of Bitcoin going on to exchanges. That is basically an increase in supply, and obviously with little demand, the price goes down because supply and demand dictate price. Okay, so supply and demand are absolutely everything. Good to understand. And as we kind of move on over, we can take a look at the inflows and the outflows by day, and we can see whether or not we've got major problems with inflows or we've got fantastic news with outflows, right? And for the most part, I like to think of this graph as the supply and demand lines. Okay, the red line is the supply and the green line is the demand. Okay, how much Bitcoin's going on to exchanges, how much Bitcoin's coming off of exchanges. And you can see here, for the most part, the demand is being so easily met by the supply that essentially we're not really seeing any decent price movement. Okay, so for the red line to be above the green line, that's very bearish. And if the green line is above the red line, then we're looking more bullish. But right now, all we can see is actually everything kind of pairing up nicely. There's no decent spikes where one outpowers the other. So again, a good indication that we are not in good times for BTC at the moment. We can then go ahead and compound this by taking a look at the different size wallets. Okay, so we've got 10 Bitcoin or more, 100 Bitcoin or more, 1,000 Bitcoin or more. We won't forget shrimps, power to the shrimps. These are the 1 Bitcoiners, okay? So over a period of time, what are these guys doing? Are they accumulating? Are they not accumulating? Recent price action with Bitcoin kind of pulling back down. We can see the shrimps, they just steadily accumulate. So as long as these guys don't get shaken out of space, I'm happy. I want to see these guys accumulate as much as possible, but I don't want to see them kind of panic selling or anything like that. That would be really unfortunate. But basically, as the price has moved up, that's by the pump opportunity, we're going to the moon. And of course, as the price goes down, it's by the dip opportunity, we're going to the moon. So these guys are doing what retail investors do best, which is just buy, and then hopefully they won't get shaken out of the space. That's the hope there. But when we take a look at these kind of 3 wallet sizes, these are slightly different. Okay, each of these are 90 days. We've got over 10 Bitcoin, so this basically does include the 101,000. These are dolphins. These are essentially your high net worth individuals. And you can see recently during this price pull to the downside, they've accumulated as well. Okay, so as that recent move to the downside over the last couple of days, they've been buying up as well. We can see the sharks also in the last day have been buying. So they've been accumulating up here. So then you think, well, why is the price going down? Where's that supply coming from? Well, it's coming from our whales. Our whales are dumping. Okay, they are basically aggressively coming out of their position. And for a reference, guys, the orange line is the price of BTC. The black line are the number of wallets that are holding the specific numbers of BTC. So what we've got is we've got the pump to the upside from the June low that was used as exit liquidity for our whales. They sold into that pump. Okay, it moved up or started to move down. They started to just kind of go sideways a little bit of accumulation, nothing too much as that price went down. And then obviously it spiked up again. So they sold into the liquidity there, and they continue to do that. So basically whales are dumping, and they're dumping on everybody else who is accumulating. So just be aware that until these guys are buying, I don't think we've got a bear market low anytime soon. So when we take a look at how they've operated in the past, that's actually the wrong data set. Let me just go back and change my filters here. I'm just going to pull this back into the previous all-time or bull run. So let me just go and put this back into 2019 range. One sec. Yeah, right here. Let me just put this into. I'm going to take it up to, let's say, August of 2019 and apply. There we go. And now I'll get rid of that. And I'll come back here. Right, okay. So basically what they do is they sell into the pump to the upside. Okay, so you see them selling into the all-time high. Then, of course, you see them accumulating before the bottom is in. Okay, so the bottom is over here for our kind of bear market. Okay, and they accumulated in September. So they start to accumulate. Okay, it gets to this point. They kind of go sideways. When it kind of comes sideways out of here, very boring stage, they start to accumulate again before any kind of major uptick. Okay, and then, of course, as that top kind of comes in, or actually just before the top, somewhere around the middle of this pump, they start to come back out again. And again, they start to accumulate as people start to have that fear moment, okay? But essentially, that's kind of what you're looking at. You're looking and waiting for this uptick here, okay? You're waiting for them to start to accumulate before the bottom is in. This is how they tend to buy, okay? So look at where they've been buying. They buy down here before the pump starts to go to the upside, okay? And so what we're waiting for is we're waiting for them to start accumulating before we start to think about the bear market bottom is in. And as I come over to here, we can see that all they're doing is coming out of their positions, okay? So this is not going to be good long-term for Bitcoin, at least maybe long-term is a bit of a harsh statement, mid-term for Bitcoin. So I'm waiting to see an uptick with the whales, okay? Until then, essentially everything for BTC, it doesn't look overly promising, right? We've obviously got this huge pullback that is due on our weekly time frame as per our stochastic RSI here, okay? But nothing is going to move in straight lines, and the market is incredibly difficult right now. Let's go ahead and jump into our chart over this side, okay? So this side here, we are sat on our hourly chart, and this time we're on Binance, okay? So Bitcoin paired up with USDT hourly chart Binance, but we're going to move this up into our daily time frame, and we're going to pull this back down a little bit, okay? So here's our daily for BTC. Now, obviously, we saw these breakdowns, and I can just go and draw a rough one of these on here as well, again, just so that we're aware of what was going on. I'm just going to roughly pull this in here, right? So you can kind of see this, this kind of move going on. Let me just adjust a fraction here and just pull it this way. Right in here. Okay, so we saw a couple of these, right? These tend to break to the downside, whereas these ones tend to break to the upside. So lower lows, lower highs break upwards, and higher lows and higher highs break downwards. So we saw this over this side. Obviously, we pulled back, we pushed back up, we tried to get in here, we failed, and so forth, right? But the most important thing about this daily chart is actually the opposite of what is going on with our weekly, and that's our stochastic RSI. Okay, so we've had a bit of a reset here on our daily stochastic RSI, okay? So the weekly is still really high. The weekly wants to come down, but before the weekly can come down, we're probably going to have to start to see a bit of a move upwards for BTC, okay? So on the daily chart, we're not quite there yet. I imagine that we've got a little bit more to come down before we can start to talk about maybe move upwards. Last time we were down in this low range, we were over here, and we obviously moved up. So we are talking about basically moving in this little direction, okay? Again, from here to here, and then bouncing around a lot during this channel. So it isn't going to be an amazing push to the upside. At least it doesn't look like it, but it could, of course. The stochastic RSI does not represent price movement, only shows you strength behind movements. And we're running out of the strength to the downside, as in we're running out of the momentum to the downside, okay, at least on some of these smaller time frames. The weekly is still very, very bearish, obviously, but for the most part, we might see some volatility that might take the price up, at least at the daily level, okay? This is something that might play out for a week or so. It's really hard to say for sure. I mean, most of these are kind of moving probably over a 2-week period, something like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if actually, it's halfway through kind of October by the time we really start to kick back into more bearishness. But it'd be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. Obviously, we broke down out of this area. We tried to rally up, and I still think we've got to move down a tad further, okay? So whether that's going to be a double bottom, we'll get into that in a second, or a little bit lower into new lower lows, I think is going to be something that we're going to be potentially seeing even today. We'll have to see how it kind of goes. I think it all depends on whether we're going to have strong momentum behind price movements. And let me go and break this down into our 8-hour. Okay, so now we're starting to talk about maybe a little bit more bearishness, right? As I said, we need to go down a little bit more. This is very apparent from our 8-hour chart, right? We're not oversold on our daily chart, right? We're close to it, but we're not there yet. So we have to come down a bit more. And our 8-hour chart it indicates this, right? We are nice and high on our stochastic RSI here. So what we want to do is we want to see this pull back down. Now I've got this kind of 1-to-1 ratio just north of the 1-to-1 ratio and the double bottom. Okay, so this basically being 17,622. We've got a 1-to-1 at about 17,777 approximately. Of course, the 1-to-1 on a slightly bigger ratio puts us down at $17,113.50. Okay, so right in this sweet spot down here, between the previous June low and a slightly new lower low, is going to be an interesting spot from an Elliott wave theory point of view. Again, this would just kind of finish us off into our little structure here. And again, this would be a 3-wave drop, and then we can move up. Now, the move upwards doesn't necessarily have to be massive, but it could be significant. And we don't know how long it's going to take to play out or anything like that. We can't do kind of predictions in terms of time using Elliott wave theory. But what we can do is kind of give ourselves a bit of an idea based on how long it's taken to kind of play out here. It's been about a week or so. So coming down here maybe towards the today, depending on the FOMC meeting, and maybe a little bit more, maybe over to kind of the end of the week or the weekend, and then start to move up. But we'll see. This 8-hour stochastic RSI, we're looking for this downward pressure. This is the area that we're looking for it. On the 4-hourly, very similar story, right? We can see up here, overbought. We're looking to bring this down into this oversold area. So again, very much aligned to the 8-hour chart, and the daily for that matter, right? The daily isn't quite where it needs to be. It needs to come down a bit more. We have our 1-to-1 ratios all down here between this area. 4-hour, 8-hour are very much aligned, saying that we need to come to the downside. Okay, so it's going to be interesting. This could happen before the FOMC meeting. Okay, we could come down, retest these low areas, for example, or alternatively, do not test those low areas. The minimum expectation has already been met. So it's also possible that all we do is we take our stochastics down to the oversold area before the FOMC meeting, and actually that gives us our momentum to just say, actually, from here, we're going to reverse up, right? So just be really cautious. This market is quite unpredictable at times. And basically what we're doing is we're trying to see whether or not the sentiment, as in the momentum behind the price movements, is strong enough to go down or go up. Okay, and we have got a lot of alignment across these smaller time frames. The 8-hour, the 4-hour charts, for example, are telling us that we can go down a bit more, although that is not a given. Okay, so just be aware that it is still very, very possible that we just rally up, but I do think the probability of it sits more with we have to move down first. Okay, there's a distinct difference between kind of, you know, seeing what is possible and what is probable. Okay, now as I come down into our hourly chart, we get a very similar story. We're up here in this overbought area. We're looking to come down to the oversold area. Okay, so like the 8-hour charts, we are looking for this downward price pressure. Okay, at least there's momentum to take the price down. Elliott wave theory is all the same here across these time frames. We are looking at that kind of $17,000 range. Okay, on the lower side, and 17.5 on the higher side. Okay, so a retest of our June lows. Okay, so there's a lot of things to think about here. We're either going to go down into a new lower low today, or tomorrow, or some point this week, or we're not. Okay, that's the dangerous level that we're at right now. Once this is done, though, I do see a significant 3-wave bounce upwards. It could be a 5-wave bounce. We don't know what that looks like until it actually happens, but a bounce nonetheless. Okay, we'll be in a good position on the 1-hour, the 4-hour, the 8-hour, the daily charts. Okay, but I don't think we should get too carried away, because that bearishness that sits on that weekly chart remains. Okay, so even with a pull to the downside on these smaller time frames, it's not really going to move that weekly time frame too much. So we want to be fully aware that there's a lot of momentum to the downside being built up on that weekly chart. That is going to be a pretty heavy hammer at some point. Okay, we can delay it. We can kind of hold it off for a little while longer with these smaller time frames and these smaller moves. But at some point, it's going to catch up with us, and it is going to, in my opinion, take us down a lot further. Okay, so the question that we have to answer, or to say the question, but what we have to kind of hope for is that the price can move up so significantly that when that weekly chart does decide to come down, that actually it holds the local lows that were created here within this week, right? So that's kind of what we're hoping for. A failure to do so, and failure to kind of hold the line. And if Bitcoin does go down to 14,600, well, then basically all chips are off the table, guys, and we should be we should be really considering $10,000 BTC at that particular point in time. Okay, so there's a lot of things to think about. There's lots of things to kind of hope for. The data itself is reasonably clear, right? We have a lot of de-risking occurring with the whales. You do as they do, you follow the money, as they say, right? So you do as they do, not as they say. You follow the money, and essentially the big money is leaving the space and small money is propping it up. Essentially, the winter, it isn't looking great. There's a lot of things to kind of worry about. You know, we've got a lot of energy kind of crisis going on. We've got a pretty tough winter ahead, I think, and that's going to obviously squeeze a lot of the retail investors to a point where they might actually be forced to sell their cryptocurrency assets to kind of survive the winter. So I'm a bit cautious with this stuff. And again, just to reiterate, because there are some people who have been popping some comments down there saying that I'm just sitting on my hands and I'm just going to wait for a bottom that never happens. That's okay. I'm not trying to buy the bottom. I want to be very crystal clear with people. I'm not buying the bottom. I want a trend upwards. Okay, once we have a trend in an upward directional move, okay, and we can say categorically that we're in a bull run, I'll buy the dip that follows that initial trend. Okay, it won't be the bottom, and I'm okay with that, but I will be buying confirmation of a bull run, and that's vastly different to what a lot of people are trying to do. Okay, they're trying to time a bottom that let's face it, just doesn't happen. And the better strategy in my mind is to get confirmation of a move and then buy that. Okay, so I'm going to leave this video there. There's a lot of things to think about, lots of questions that you're going to have to answer for yourselves. I'm obviously not a financial advisor. I can't give you financial advice, but you know, I give you the data as I see it here inside the charts. Guys, I'm going to leave it there. If you found it useful and informative, hit the like button. I do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. Guys, till the next one.